And we are live on AUS Prop Investors. We bring the big names and we have the big fun. And tonight we have a big platform with a big founder. So, Luke, how are you going?
I'm very well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Like I think we've absolutely hit the website hits that we have to Microburbs on our Facebook Lives. It would be disservice to the community if we didn't get you on. So excited for this. How you going, Joe?
Mate, I'm fantastic. We talk about, why we started this group to share all the knowledge and do all of that stuff. But the true reason was we needed an excuse to sit down for an hour to speak with people like Luke Metcalfe. So we've had to create this group and do all of this stuff to finally get to this point, mate, because I'm absolutely pumped. I went back in the archives and we've literally been talking about microburbs because it's the ultimate property investor tool for the past 3 years or so. You are the creator of it, and you've done an amazing job with it. So I'm pumped. I'm absolutely pumped for this one, young Jeff.
He's a big fanboy.
Thank you very much. Yeah, everything I've done in my life so far has led up to this moment as well. So here we are.
Wow. I hope it lives up to your expectations. I'm sure it will.
This is it.
Yeah.
Have we asked how you are, Jeff?
No, I was waiting for that. I was like, is he going to ask me how do I have to? Yeah, I'm going really well, Joe. I'm excited, mate. On helping in the backgrounds and like just seeing how fast some of the markets out there are moving. So I'm interested if we can unpack some of that with Luke. I mean, we'll sort of keep it to areas that you sort of are all over, Luke. So make sure we do that. But it's going to be, I'm very well and got a haircut and got the crickets in the background as well. So shall we get into the quote of the week? Luke, what is the quote that you have prepared for us?
It's very original. Are you ready for it?
Here we go.
There's nothing to fear except fear itself.
Wow. Was that Napoleon Hill who said that?
Napoleon Hill?
I might have gone back further than that. Isn't it? I know it gets attributed to Winston Churchill, but it's just the first quote that came to my mind when you asked. So there it is.
FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt is close to
a similar figure in history.
Yeah,
someone who got things done.
Yeah. What does it mean to you, Luke? What does that quote mean to you?
So we are all plagued by doubts and fears, and I think that reality is what you're afraid of doesn't end up being nearly as bad as you think. So if you write, I'm an empirical kind of guy, so I have kept diaries in the past, and troubles that I've had in the past, like reading back on it, you find a whole lot of things that late night worries, and it's like, oh, that thing blew over. That wasn't that big a deal.
You don't even remember it unless it's written down.
So what you're worried about at the time is nowhere near as important in the scheme of things. There are much bigger things. And if I'm slightly off topic, but if I may, I used to actually record all of my mood and productivity. I did that for many years.
Wow.
One thing. I did it I started doing it every 3 hours, and the model basically came back with you should just drink all the time. Yeah, you're happier when you drink. So basically, the optimum number of drinks per hour was 1, and so that was a rather short-term model. It wasn't taking into account long-term consequences. I then moved to one where I was saving the data every day. So every 24 hours, at the end of the day, I'd give a rating for mood and productivity. And what I had imagined the narrative of my year to be actually like, leading up to some major event, good or bad. And, say something bad happens to me, right? And I would think it's down there, and then I slowly recover. But actually, if you look at the data, it was actually much more cyclical, and not cyclical. I'm very much a man, but I found that then the cycles could change in actual duration, but everything just went back to these natural cycles. So what you're worried about, for me, what I found is what I was worried about had not that much bearing on actually my mood and productivity.
Wow.
Interesting.
Okay.
That's very interesting. I feel like we could unpack that a little bit, but it's about property data. That's what we're really interested in.
It's just another time series. Yeah. So it's like it's all time series data. Try and forecast. Try and find the patterns, right?
Yeah. And okay. I won't ask any questions about that.
You can tell Joe wants to do it. We can make a whole podcast about that.
I want to dig a little
Joe,
bit more.
I'm pulling you back.
Yeah.
My quote of the week that I'm interested in as well. But I thought it would be remiss of me if I didn't do a Stephen Hawking quote, and it's not really property related, but it is AI is likely to be either the worst, or sorry, I should start with either the best or the worst thing to happen to humanity. So I think
I would very much agree with that.
Oh,
it's heaven or hell at this point.
Yeah,
there ain't much in between. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a good little quote. Mine is very much along the similar lines. It is who wrote it? Google Brain, Andrew Ng, the co-founder of Google Brain. He said AI is the new electricity, and just the access that everybody now has in the world. Like you can literally download the AI computer onto your computer and just crunch large sums of data pretty much for free. You know, a couple of dollars here or there for whatever. But you can do some interesting things, not just property data. You can I've created Chrome extensions and I don't know how to code. I asked the AI how to code, created Chrome extensions. I've created platforms. I've created all of this crazy stuff within my business that I would never have had access to. So what is that going to mean for, actually, that's a question for you, Luke. What is this going to mean for knowledge workers, right? Like if you think about it, a software engineer is getting paid, $150,000 a year. A plumber is getting paid $60,000 a year. Do you see like this? Yeah, it's probably not fair, but do you see a divide? Like, where do you see knowledge work going?
Yeah, I remember. I think there was a tweet by Sam Altman, one of the founders of OpenAI, and he listed currently it costs $30,000. Some figures like this: $30,000 to make an iPhone app and $600 to get a plumber out. And he speculated, I wonder where those prices are going to be in future. So some evening out, obviously. So where it ends up is very interesting. I think for people like yourself, if you have a vision and you want to achieve things and you can look at the results, then you can get amazing things done. Where it all ends up, so I think obviously it's not replacing at this stage the biggest experts. We're not out of a job, but I think people who can learn fast and keep learning all the time and can exercise some judgment over whether something fits, I think the next year or two, I think will be pretty good. Later on, I think there's going to be a lot more experimentation by the AI. So imagine if you come up with 10 headlines, what should this discussion, what's the best headline for it on Facebook? You could come up with 10 of them.
You need to consider when buying your next property. I mean, that's not bad, but it could be better.
That's not bad. Yeah, pretty good. So imagine you ask ChatGPT for 10 of those, and then it just experiments on all of them. And then imagine the next step after that, where content is actually evolving of its own without the need for human intervention. So I see a big future for evolving and customized content further down the track.
I saw you do a Facebook post.
It could be very entertaining. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about tonight, though, Joe? We are talking about property data and property forecasting, because those are the types of things that people are asking about day to day on our Facebook group, on this thing that's now 34,000 people, and those are the sort of things that I think you were going to be talking about, the key sort of data points that you consider vitally important when you're looking at things such as I suppose affluence and livability, all those sort of cool things that you've been looking at for years and years, and just sort of seeing to talk to and how that looks in forecasting. So did I miss anything, Joe?
Mate, no, I'm just absolutely excited for this one. Like we have it's very timely because we've got all this open AI stuff and technology going on, and we've got a true expert in the data scientist space. The property market is shifting and changing, and people are trying to understand where are the opportunities, how can I take advantage of this? And that's the whole point of this podcast, is to educate people. And also, guys, jump in the questions, because we're probably going to go into some interesting topics and go a little bit deep, but throw some questions as we go along, and we'll try and pull it back and add as much value as we absolutely can. But yeah, I guess what we'll do is introduce who Luke is, some of the platform that he's and go into the platform that he's built and been working on for the past, I think, 15 years or something absolutely crazy. And I'm excited, guys. Jump into the questions, throw anything our way, and we will dive right in.
The amazing thing with commercial property investing is that in most cases, it's cash flow positive from day one, which means that you can drive those profits towards paying down the debt. There are instances with commercial property investing where you can actually have the property pay itself off over 10 years, which is absolutely crazy. With commercial property, you get massive net yield, so you can expect anywhere between 6 to 10%. And as we've seen in the current boom, these properties not only provide large cash flow, they do certainly grow wildly in value too. Now, with big rewards comes some risk, and this is why you should de-risk your investment as much as possible. And the way you do that is with expert due diligence. And this is why we highly recommend people hire professionals to help you along in your investing journey. Steve Polisi of Polisi Property is one such expert. Being a chartered mechanical and structural engineer in a past life, Steve draws on his analytical and mathematical skills to do that expert due diligence for you. With 6 years experience in the space, Steve has over 1,200 property transactions under his belt. He's the guy you want in your corner, crunching the numbers and finding the best properties in the best locations, along with ensuring that you avoid the mistakes. Steve has actually even written the book on commercial property investing in Australia. And not only is it a bestseller, I believe it to be the most comprehensive in commercial property investing on the market today. He's been generous enough to give us a massive discount for our audience of 50%. So use the code AUSPROP, click the link below, get a copy today, and start learning and getting on your commercial property investing journey.
I must say, Polisi likes some good data, I would say. So, but commercial property, is that? I don't know if that's something that you're going to take over. Are you going to take over the commercial property, or are you going to focus on residential, Luke?
I've done a fair bit of work in commercial property in my consulting. So I have forecasted net effective rents and done site selection. So it's definitely within our purview. We have a lot of data in the pipeline, listing data for commercial property. So at the moment, our primary interest in commercial is how it affects resi. So, what's happening, what are the vacancy rates like in the local shops? So that's the first cab off the rank. But I'm definitely very interested in commercial. It's a tougher game in terms of data because there are a lot more complicated agreements between landlord and tenant. And so, whereas resi is a lot more, particularly like your classic R2 zoned kind of land, very much a nice predictable commodity for an AI to work on. But big impacts for it. Very interesting space, particularly after COVID. So I am definitely keen to get back into analyzing the commercial market. Probably,
I didn't expect that answer.
Probably not this year.
Yeah, because I sort of thought that but there you go. Full of surprise. So who is Mr. Luke in front of us? If you've been living under a rock, you are a veteran startup entrepreneur. It says 15 years experience in website publishing. So you built a nation master. So stats. So you reached up to 20 million views per month in the 2000s. That must have been huge. And you sold your last business, Netcoma, to US based Profound Networks. But I think the thing probably a lot of people know you for is Microburbs, which is a free and authoritative source, or maybe not free anymore. Sorry, so maybe that's I took that for
free. Add a meum to the end of that. Freemium.
Yeah. Premium, yeah. But yeah, like you've unpacked a whole bunch of information there. So, before the question we love asking people as a first is what your first property investment looked like? What will your first property look like, and how did it go?
Yeah, so I have always been a startup entrepreneur. So I've always put money back into the business itself. So I'm a homeowner. So I did some market timing with and did fairly well selling and buying at the right time. But yeah, my focus has always been on having money left over, liquid, for me to plug into businesses. So I'm very interested in the investor space. Maybe, obviously, it could be good to have someone probably like yourselves who are in the game, but maybe also I can provide a little bit of objectivity. So I'm sort of on the outside looking in. Obviously, we look at other things like livability, but it can be for some people in the space, it can be challenging. Like I meet a lot of smart entrepreneurs, and because they've got these repayments to make on these negatively geared properties, they can't invest in the business as much as they would like. So I'm more like, I'll just find somewhere to live and otherwise have money left over to help other investors out.
Love it. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, and the multiples that you can get on a technology startup are unreal. It's awesome. I'd love to chat to property data, but I guess how do you kind of break it down because we got I'm in the industry. I look at property data every single day, and I think you can go too deep with it, and it gets really confusing for people. Like, how do you unpack property data and these capital growth things and in an easy to consume way for people to understand?
Yeah, there are many, many different perspectives on this problem. There are many different theories. So it's all kinds of experts. They emphasize different things. So for me, the big thing is what is backtestable. So what can I prove? So how can I run this as a model, as like pretending that you had an agent that was back in time? By agent, I mean like someone who is independent, who can buy and sell, not a real estate agent. And so can I send my models back in time and know nothing about the future and not be tuned for the future and make money? So that's my primary focus is so applying things like I've done work on other time series, forecasting NFTs, and a lot of common principles with that. So it's all time series, and when you do the back testing, it's a lot harder. So it's a lot easier to look back over a period and just say, then look and then find the patterns. But then to actually only know what's true for a certain period of time and then to project forward is a much bigger challenge, and I love to welcome that challenge. So I like to look at things primarily through the guise of the future and predicting the future. That's the hard thing to do. But also, we're at Microburbs, we are here to serve others. So obviously, humans have a lot of knowledge as well, and experts such as yourselves can provide a whole lot of expertise. So we also provide all kinds of indicators that can lead to capital growth and livability for our customers.
Yeah, and that's some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about is you'd say data, it's like, what the heck is this stuff? You've kind of broken it down into a few categories, like a few key categories. Let's maybe go through them high level about what exactly they are and how they kind of affect. Because what's the goal? What was the the hypothesis that you're trying to cause? How do we get capital growth, or what did it look like at the early stages? And what are
so the one component is how do you get the capital growth, and the other component is what are all the aspects of livability. So what are all the different ways? And obviously livability can lead to capital growth anyway. So the original site, the old version, was very much what are all of the different ways of looking at property. So breaking it up into like having a HIP score, what are the most trendy places, and where are the tattoo parlors and the exotic foods. You've got a lifestyle score, which is more about, does it have things that regular people want, not necessarily as trendy, but does it have parks and an RSL where you can play bingo on a Saturday night, and a local pub, and just shops to go to, beaches. So just general sort of recreation. So we put that all under lifestyle. And convenience. So that was more about how quickly can you get to things that you might need very regularly, like above and more than anything is employment and just proximity to public transport. And tranquility. So on the other side, you want a quiet life. You don't want to be disturbed by neighbors. You want green. We've got that for you as well. And family, which is like, are there other families around? Will my kids have a good life, good schools, and a good safe area that for raising kids, and crime, of course. So keeping yourself safe. Those were the initial lifestyle kind of scores that we came up with the old site, and then in the new site, it hasn't been quite as score driven yet, but we're getting there. But so we've got crime and disadvantage. So how safe are you? Are there areas of underprivilege? We've got the real estate, which is much broader now, way more different indicators in there, much more targeted to the investor. And we've got health. So that's something we didn't have before. So going into great detail on all the kinds of ailments that you have. Environment. So there's things like elevation and pollution and energy efficiency. So there's that carbon efficiency side of things as well. Lifestyle. We have, again, people and culture. So drilling deeper on what kind of person can you find a good active community, and will you find people like yourself? A big thing, particularly if you're moving from overseas. And I think I've covered them all.
Should we bring up should we bring it up and actually look at it visually and sort of see what it looks like, or it's still
bring it up. I guess I'd like to talk to how I think about and have used microburbs myself as a property investor. I particularly look at it from, I guess this is what data does, right? Data takes all of the information and boils it down to a bit of a score, a bit of a number. And I go to a location first in microburbs before I fly out there. And I build a list of assumptions of what I think this area is going to look like based on the data that you have on the platform and various other sources, like going through Google Maps and going zooming through the streets, having conversations with property managers. All of these things you should probably be doing as a property investor to if you're going to go out there and do it yourself. I use microburbs to build that assumption, say where is the housing commission pockets? What does that look like? Because if there's 50 houses right there that are housing commission, that's probably not going to say actually I'll come back to asking a question about housing commission and capital growth and prices increases, but I imagine that it doesn't correlate so much and you might not get the best tenants. So it's only then do I fly down to that location once I've made my assumptions, and then I try and prove or disprove my assumptions based on empirically going there and actually doing it. So it's a great first starter for any property investor that wants to understand an area, to see where are the schools, where are the families hanging out, where is the most amount of crime going on.
How much income are they on as well?
100%. What income? Is that a fair assessment of? I mean, is that the normal use case for property investors for microburbs?
Yeah, that sounds like a great use. So the kinds of things that you mentioned there are really common uses for the site. So we want to cover off all of your data needs at Microburbs. We want to be the one-stop shop. So we're not just here to say here are the 4 things you need to care about and nothing else. So it's much more like a broad play. We want to cover everything to do with Australian suburban life.
So have you done any like research and data into housing commission and how that affects capital growth and prices for those areas?
Not lately. I have in the past. And so, yes, close to it, it can be depressed. So it doesn't grow as fast. I understand. I'd love to get back to it and see where it is. I suspect there'll be different kinds of housing commission. Got my beer here.
Cheers.
Yeah, so there'll be different kinds of housing commission. I suspect there'll be other things going on, and I'd love to answer that question more fully. But yeah, there are, broadly speaking, there are areas, sadly, that are disadvantaged. And it's not just public housing, but there are other classes of disadvantage that might not right now be the best investment opportunity. And I guess the upside for them is that the housing nearby remains affordable. So definitely public housing is a predictor.
That's very good. That's a great way to think about it. Is it's more like it's a disadvantage score, like the CIFA score. What else is included in that? What's another disadvantage type of like that fits into that numbers to say, hey, this area a little bit more disadvantaged than over this pocket here?
Yeah, I'm working on it now. So I'll be able to tell you authoritatively soon. But broadly speaking, when you have an underclass, so similar to public housing, it doesn't have to be public housing, but where you have people that they have needs, they have struggles in their life, below the working poor kind of thing, that can depress prices. But yes, I will have very specific indicators once I've proven it. I like to know for sure before I go out with things, because you've got to control for things. And
there's something I want to hit on there. You said things you've proven. So I think the things you've proven, I think you've spoken previously mentioned about livability. What I think are the key things that you have proven that impact property prices?
So I remember lifestyle score back when we did that back in 2016. That was a predictor. We see, so there's definitely the price relative to other places nearby. So that's a really big one.
So like the ripple effect, is that sort of?
Kind of, yeah. So you've got ripple effect. You've got like the timing of the market. You've got the balancing of price to neighbors. So all of these things come in. So that is, I think, it's a particularly good use of machine learning to do pricing. So as a human, you can come into a place and say, I think this is worth more than what it is now, but like, how do you actually arrive at a figure? So for example, in politics, coming back to the disadvantaged, right? So it's like, some people think there should be more welfare payments. Some people think there should be less, but very few people can put a figure to exactly how much it's going to be forever, right? It's just like more or less. Whereas a computer can actually like nail a price. So it can look at a whole lot of things and go, for this time right now, this particular market is overpriced or underpriced. And it's not just a vibe. It's got like an empirical means of arriving at a particular price, and it'll make a prediction that it will hit that price. So as you get lots of different indicators going on, as it gets more complicated, the machines get better at having an input as to where that price should be.
So what is livability? Like, how can how do I understand livability, what it means, and how I can utilize it as a property investor?
So livability, how good life is. So it is, do people have a pleasant life? And there's obviously different kinds of people will want different kinds of things. So you're young, trendy people. I was once young but never trendy, but I still make models for this. So the stimulation, vibe, the ability to meet new and interesting people, to be up on the latest trends. So that's one element of livability. So you might have heard of the walk score that kind of correlates to hip score, but we go beyond walking to like all the stuff. And then so your lifestyle people, I won't name I'll just describe the kind of market behind it. So lifestyle might be more your mainstream person. So maybe like myself when I was young, not as hip, but I still lived in kind of hip suburbs. I was a bit of an interlooper, but so you just want what other people want. Go for lifestyle, mainstream, middle class kind of thing. And affluence score I didn't mention. Affluent, don't forget affluence. So a lot of people want to live in a place that has great wealth or status associated with it. Either it's just because that's the kind of person they are and they want to be amongst the same kind of people, or perhaps they aspire to greater wealth and status and see great benefit in that. Where income and income and life quality do correlate. It's not a perfect correlation. It's there are other things that correlate better, but it is actually quite a good thing. I will mention actually. So one really powerful thing for why you should buy in a good area is that your kids will do better. So there was this is a very exhaustive study that was done. So what they did was they looked at, the problem is if you try and do this analysis, you look at people who move, maybe people who move, they already had something, they're different to the people who just stayed where they were, right? They might be more aspirational, they might have different personalities, right? So they got around this by, they looked at siblings, and they made the assumption that the younger sibling who spends more time in the new place, what's the difference between how their life ends up? So imagine at an extreme case, you've got a 2-year-old and an 18-year-old, 16 years difference, and you decide to move to the other side of the tracks, a better life. So then you compare the life outcomes of the 2-year-old and the 18-year-old, and what they found was that moving to the nicer area really helped that younger kid. So having role models around, I think, was a particularly strong thing that they talked about.
So that's super interesting. So are there things that we can look at, maybe from a data perspective or from your, on the platform side of things, to say like that the early indicators of this thing is starting to change. This area is starting to change. It is starting to gentrify and is starting to become X suburb. It's starting to have a higher livability. Like, is there a way to see where the scores are going up, 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 up? Perfect.
Like
the price of this place is $700,000, but based on these 8 factors, it's all going up. So these people can afford to spend more. They've got more lifestyle. They've got more livability. Like, is it mapped out like that? Is it not mapped out, but is that possible? Can we do that?
So one thing you can look at is planning applications.
As in to develop sort of certain types of.
That's right. So basically, if people are spending more on the building, then if it's going to maintain a certain ratio of house, building to land, does that mean that there's confidence in the land below? If people are pushing up big buildings and expensive buildings. So, and there's that path of gentrification. So it doesn't just exactly hit all suburbs at the same time going from the city center. It hits some suburbs and not others. Some develop a name. And so one thing you can look at is the development applications. Another thing is property listings. So what do they talk about? Smeg and Mila, does that show up in there? Then that is actually a predictor. So that is a leading indicator of property growth. Now, having said that, be careful because, so one thing to be careful of is that if people are investing loads in the building, what you're really buying is land. So land appreciates and buildings depreciate. So you don't necessarily want to buy the western suburb for where it's like $1.5 million where people are putting on one massive $1 million mansions, you may be better off getting the $1.5 million land with a knockdown shack on it. So you have to be careful about land versus building in gentrification, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so someone's tracked that if they have a SMEG or Mila in their advertisement, the property price is going to go up.
It is a leading indicator. Yes.
Okay.
Let's hope. Yeah. So my analysis, analysis hasn't finished yet, but we're certainly looking at things like that. So is it that people are putting SMEG and Mila, and so are they just adding to the value of all the buildings, and that's why the prices are going up, and then that depreciates? Or does it say something about the kind of person who moves in? It's like, oh, we're now attracting this more high income kind of buyer, more funky. That's if it's particularly stylish, is that a vote of confidence for the area as well? So it's like, if there's beautiful finishings, does that also mean that there's beautiful people in beautiful restaurants having beautiful lives nearby, and people will pay extra for that?
Yeah, so like SMEG and Mila, by the way, for people that may not may not know what we're talking about here, is appliances. And
I thought so. I was like, because I'm
like washing machines.
It just shows the type of area that I live in. Jeez, what am I?
It's like Fisher and Paykel and Kelvinator for rich people.
Yeah. I'm interested because we often hear about data versus boots on the ground. Everybody, and you may not have an opinion on this, so if you don't, it's okay. But I just want to ask this because I think it's interesting to get different people's perspectives. What are your thoughts on how vital data is versus actually getting to a location and checking things out?
I think both are important. So data isn't at a point where it knows exactly how the house looks. That there are things that are going to be missed. Dare I say, sometimes they don't go to total effort to show all the bad things of a property. Just being controversial here, but so you might have to find that out for yourself. I remember there was a case of there's a property, I think it was in Strathfield, where there was a massive water tower behind the house, and they just photoshopped out the water tower. So it was just a very brazen example of that. So yes, they. I think that there's definitely a place for it, particularly on the individual, less so on the area selection, I think, but particularly on the property side of things. But still, there's value in both. So obviously, there are different kinds of analysts. So there are other real estate analysts that are much more, so they'll work in spreadsheets, and they'll deal in more broad aggregates, like for larger regions, and they will have a mental picture of each of those. And as long as they can prove it, so as long as they can show that they better than the national average, then whoever can, in my view, whoever can prove it, that's the people to listen to.
So let's just wheel it back a little bit. I'm a first time property investor. I've got $500,000-$600,000. Like, what are some of the things that I should be thinking about for capital growth with my limited budget? Because I've only got so much money. I can't buy in Sydney. I can't buy in Newcastle. I need to choose another market. Like, what are some of the things that I should be starting out right at the beginning looking at? Before I even go into the data, maybe like talk to the data, obviously, but before I go deep, I need to kind of whittle that list down. Like, what are some of those things to look for?
Yeah, well, I can say don't stress too much, because my analysis is finding a lot of value in the bottom end of the market, really low down. I want to confirm it first, so I don't want to jump the gun. So I can't say exactly, but it doesn't seem to be a problem for me if you don't have much money. There's lots to be done. So
when you say bottom end, are we talking the sort of 3 to 600K? Or, I mean, I won't hold you to it, but is that sort of the price point?
Yeah. Like go to find cheap places in cheap states. Like, just go low.
That's not financial advice. Do not go out there and
Not
just
financial advice. Oh yeah, we haven't done the disclaimer. Nothing I say is financial advice.
We get the cop up.
Yeah, AI's. There we go. Disclaimer.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about anything.
But so what are some of the things that I should be thinking about? I'm a first-time investor. Like when I'm looking, when I'm looking at a new place to consider, are there like what do they look like? Are there things, or is it just there's so much data that there's no way to pinpoint a few factors?
What might outperform?
Yeah. I mean, I would say I gave a bit of the rosy stuff, but I would say to them, know your biases. So just because you drive out to somewhere and you fall in love with a place and you say, oh, this is just like what we had on that holiday. You remember that with the kids? And it was a glorious time. And the way they set up this cafe is just so similar. I can see this town becoming just like Barrel in a few years.
Yeah, this is the Byron of
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I would be skeptical of, like, you don't have, I'm sorry to say, no human being has that much experience, particularly if you're a new buyer. So there's a whole lot of humans are very quick to find patterns in things and have opinions, particularly things like politics and major life decisions. People they're very confident relative to how much they know. So we've evolved as we have to make split-second decisions so that we don't get eaten by a tiger. Yeah. So, or that person's dodgy, that he might chop me up. So that's how our AI has been, our neural net has been created. So be aware that just that is not really enough. And people also have a bias towards their own area. So you can think, you ask someone, where's the best place to invest? And they'll say, oh, around here, obviously. And I'm surrounded by people who also think that. So they've all chosen that. So the Northern Beaches is the place. So the Northern Beaches is filled with people who want to go to the beach. Yeah. And that is, and everyone agrees. So obviously, like, you're not talking to anybody else. So be aware that people are growing. What drives these markets in a dynamic economy like Australia with very high levels of immigration. It's a complex society as well. So on the one hand, real estate is really good in that it feels very, it's much more tangible than owning stock, but it can be misleading as well. So it might not be quite as tangible as you think, because things are supply and demand. I've been hiring a lot, and I've been surprised to find out that I only hire people. I only get an interview if they've got distinction average for their university, and even then, like, I've got a guy who's like way off the 99.95.
Is choosing that type of person more of your own bias, or is that a statistically reliable metric to choose?
Yeah, that is a challenge in hiring, right? So if you're a Google, then you have enough, so they can do analyses, right? But in a startup, you have to rely on these instincts, and you just go, that kind of person. You have to be able, and I think entrepreneurs are actually on average more likely to overrepresent. So they're more likely to find patterns too early. So it's a bias that I have to be aware of as well. And obviously there are many different ways. But anyway, what I was saying about I've been interviewing these very smart people who want to work on a public data site. It's easy to attract people when you've got a site like Microburbs. But unless they study economics, well, I asked them this question. So imagine there is a whole lot of in a metropolis, a whole lot of new houses are put into an area and nothing else. What happens to prices? And almost everyone says prices go up.
But that's not to be the case, is it? Yeah,
that's not the case. So and these are the smartest people, right? So how much economic understanding is out there? So you guys going out there and providing this kind of education, I think is really valuable. Like if people don't know supply and demand, how do you know like when one market's going to go up and another one's going to go down, right? You need experts. And
could you
how,
unpack?
yeah, I was going to say, how important is supply and demand to capital growth?
Everything. Prices are supply and demand. That's all they are. Yeah. Until obviously you can, I mean, that is what it is. So you're taking a position on the relative demand versus supply of something. That I can't think of anything else. Everything else just feeds into those two things. So if you don't understand those two sides of the equation, then you probably shouldn't have an opinion on the price of that thing.
And what factors into supply and demand?
So supply, obviously, how much is being built? Not much of it in Australia, obviously. And demand, who wants to live in the area, who's coming from overseas, who's coming from interstate. If you're in Queensland, then you get a lot of us New South Welshmen. And huge. Obviously, there's a huge amount of things to do with lifestyle, proximity. So different ethnic groups go for different things. So like your Western and Northern Europeans, they go for space and privacy, whereas your most other ethnic groups go for convenience and near employment. So there's another thing to think about. Let's say that you are an Anglo-Australian and you find some out of the way place and you think it's beautiful. Well, will someone in migrants who are growing in number, 300,000 coming soon, are they going to have the same view? That's kind of what I said before about the cheapest places, but it's complex. There's a lot to it. There are many different kinds of good investments.
So can we just look at supply and demand as a number, right? There's a balance of supply and demand. That's a metric. Can we just look at that and say, you know what, this place is getting really tight for demand. There's a limited supply. It's going to go up in value. Like, is that how easy it is to identify?
So there's supply and demand today, and there's supply and demand in the future. So that makes it harder. So your real estate agent, your buyer's agent, that is out there pounding the pavements. They're living in the world of like, how do you make the buyer and the seller meet right now? But even then, the players are thinking about the future as well. Like, are they going to have enough money for their next place? Are they going to get a good sale so that they can do the next thing, buy $1 million in Bitcoin or whatever they want to do? That's the complexity, is like where it's going to be. I know I'm not giving, I don't have as I said, I don't have the 5 things that, these are the
I'm glad I didn't make the title.
But
speaking about supply and demand, did you see the other day that startup guy Balaji, who was saying that Bitcoin would be $1 million in the next 90 days? He was putting all over Twitter. He wanted people to bet him that would be.
Yeah, right. Was that 90 days ago?
No, this was I think it was 5 days ago. But yeah, okay. That's the old classic old supply and demand, because it's sort of starting to see more money start to come into the economy. But anyway, beside the point, property forecasting. This is a thing that I've heard you speak about, and you sort of talked about the wares of it. I believe you would sort of say anybody trying to predict 10 to 15 to 20 plus years, you're not really going to be able to do it that accurately. You can only really do it in the next 3 to 5 years. Could you unpack why that's the case? And
yes, so far from what I've seen, things even. I have to look further, but there is an evening out over time. So, but the great thing about the property market is that it's slow moving and it's not like the stock market. So very, very hard to compete. I could come up with a brilliant model for the stock market in the 70s. So the original people that did it in the 70s, they would just see some pattern. Oh, that's a Head and Shoulders. If it goes like that, then you do this. You have these simple rules. And that in real estate, because it's so much more slow moving, and because people haven't done that much work with the data, it's not really usually done with pure machine learning. There's actually a huge amount of opportunity that I'm still there. So it's like the 1970s for real estate.
So a question about the like AI side of things. You've been working with AI for the last couple of years. Now everyone has access to AI. Is that going to, like, how can I use these type of tools for my own investing and my own data and my own research as an individual? Have you thought about that?
Go to microburbs.com.au. In the future when we have that up. But yeah, so seriously, to answer your question, AI needs data. That's the big thing. So there's lots of AI startups out there that talk about how they've got this great AI, but if they don't have data, there's nothing to learn from. So it's not like you with all of your human knowledge, all your experience, you go and meet someone and you go, I know what that guy's going to do. I know what he's about. Yeah. It's starting afresh. So if you want to benefit from AI, then you have to have data. If you don't have data, then you go to someone who is making predictions that does have data.
Yeah.
I don't know if I fully answered the question there.
No. It's go to the experts for what they're good at. You can use this new technology. It is fun to play around with, but at the end of the day, you still need to have all of the research and be able to ask the right questions for the AI and set it up correctly.
So the benefit of AI is that it can look at a very large number of things. So human decision making is complex. So even though it is a whole lot of humans, in aggregate, there's just a very, very large number of things. And very often they're things that you look at it and you go, look, this is reliable, but I can backtest this over time, but this is not easy to explain. It's kind of this. What's the causation? I'm not sure, but because there's just so much in there. So, for example, people will say you need to be near a train station. Yeah, the capital growth is going to be better. So, buyer's agent drives into town, sees a train station, or probably even doesn't bother. He just sees it on a map. Oh yeah, there's the train station, and that he'll give it a tick, and it is that it goes closer to the gauge moves towards the green zone is more likely to be good for capital growth. So I fed that into a model, and along with 70,000 other things, and I found that the model wasn't using proximity to train station at all. And like, how could that be? Like, what's going on? What does this model use? And I looked further into it, and I found that it was using, when people filled out in the census, that they actually use the train to get to work. So it's like, and that's a simple example of how, given the better data, so people who actually use a train to get to work, that might actually be a better train station. So I don't know, in Sydney we have like certain train stations that are about to be decommissioned, Clyde, I think, and it's like barely used. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't take you into town, or maybe it's a station where the trains go through very often. It's not a major hub. So there are all of these indicators within data that can help you in ways. And a big thing is that the AI loves to split the country up into bits. So it'll have different models for different parts of the country. There are different kinds of market dynamics. So it can be, and obviously as a human, particularly like a non-expert who is not looking at property data all the time, you probably know one or just a couple of places of the country really well and make assumptions about the market, but in actual fact, it will have different dynamics.
So are there like fundamental things that we can look at as a property investor without going into the deep detail, like the core fundamental pack? Like, you've got your eight metrics that you were talking about: the livability, the crime, the people and culture, the lifestyle, the hipness. So you just kind of aggregate them into an overall kind of score, or if you were 25, you got $600,000 to go spend on an investment, like how would you go out there and try and make it happen?
That's a good question for you guys. So how do you make it happen? I don't have the exact formula on which because I'm in the middle of the analysis, so I'm updating it. So I had lots of great analysis from back in the day, but it's been 5 years. So I've got data going back now, much more data. So it's from 1990 through to today. So a huge amount of time series data to check. So what really interests me is being able to, I believe that there's a reasonable chance that we're in uncertain times. And so what really interests me is a model that works regardless of what time. So I want a model that works every year from 1990. So I don't care if it's a bull market, a bear market. I don't care if there's another Bush that's invaded Iraq, or Putin's decided he wants a little bit more of the Slavic world, or there's a whole pile of animals in a wet market in China that are getting a little bit too intimate. Like, I don't know about that stuff. I just want to know year after year, can I make money? And so that's my focus with my machine learning.
Love that.
So is that the sort of time frame over which you start to reset? So 5 years ago you did this analysis. Is that roughly a good sort of time where people should start to say, if it's further than that, it probably isn't going to be a good predictor of what may occur in the future?
Sorry, I was looking at the user comments. I got distracted
from I love this comment from Brian. I'm uncertain if there is a reasonable chance we're in an uncertain market.
All right.
I certainly agree with that. Well,
so I suppose getting back to it. So 5 years ago, is that sort of a place in time, and you say that's long enough for me to go and revisit it, or should people reevaluate their investment thesis more frequently? Or, I mean, I know that's a bit of a subjective question, but yeah. At least in terms of that.
So for me, building forecasting models, I want them always running. So the reason I say 5 years is because I was consulting in this sort of data augmentation, geo stuff for 5 years. So I came back to it last year. And so that's what brings me back to it. That's how you get to the number 5. So in forecasting, it's easy to see a pattern in the past, and then you've got back testing to try and predict the future. And then you've got even that last thing of okay, you actually did make a prediction at this point here. How did that go? And constantly updating those models. So
how close have you gotten to predicting capital growth?
The models are looking very good. So the models are looking very it's always a question of
model's not complete yet. Yeah. The model's not complete, but stuff that you've done in the past, how confident have you gotten to say, you know what, this area is going to be good, and 5 years later you look at it and you're like, oh damn, I was right. How close have you gotten to predicting it?
So I've come up with models that look extremely good, and now the job is to try and pick them apart. Is there some problem with it? Are there some other factors to control from? Is there some leakage from the future that I need to look for? So it looks, so the models I'm working on now, very reliably make money relative. So what I've set the goal is to make money relative to national growth. So I'm not building a macro model into this. I don't have a view on what the RBA is going to do with interest rates. It's just what suburbs are relatively good compared to other suburbs. And so relative to national growth, the models are looking extremely good. I mean, if in a month's time I release them and I say they're very good, I'll still be very happy. If they went down from extremely to good, very good, that's still I'll be happy.
Well, let's jump into some questions that we've got from the audience. So if anyone does have any deep burning questions that they want to ask, throw them in the comments and we will get to them. We'll just jump to our sponsored post now and then dive right in.
This live session is sponsored by Scott Agate from Hello House. Scott has created the world's first property negotiation as a service business. So what does that mean? Well, let's think about it. When was the last time you negotiated on anything over $100, let alone a property that is going to be one of the biggest investments of your life? The vendor, they have a trained negotiator on their side in the form of a real estate agent. That's kind of like you stepping into the ring with Mike Tyson after never training a day of boxing in your life. These guys are trained professionals, and that's what they do day in and day out. And this is what Hello House does every single day as well. They negotiate on property to get the best buy price from the real estate agents. Scott Agate, he's the expert negotiator. He has been in this industry since 1995. He owned and operated 3 Bell franchises. Scott was the guy that was teaching these real estate agents all these agent games. He knows all of their tricks. Having him on your side is going to give you a massive unfair advantage and literally save you tens of thousands of dollars. Unlike other ways of purchasing property, Scott's incentives are aligned with you, the buyer, meaning the more money he saves you, the more money he makes, which is what you want. You need to have those incentives aligned. Scott has kindly offered our group a massive discount on the retainer fee for his service. So if you're looking to buy your next home or investment property, click the link below to get in touch.
We are back. So a question I wanted to ask was about when you've been looking at data for probably since I've been in nappies, maybe not that long, because I am actually
You've been in nappies for a while.
Well, there's a little secret joke. So I wanted to know.
We can only see from here up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What is an unexpected sort of outcome you found from, or unexpected data point that you didn't expect? The random sort of one, but.
Some of the black swans or grey gooses that are out there flying around, and you're like, "Ooh, I didn't expect that." What the heck?
That's a good question. I remember one time, so I'm trying to think in the real estate space. I remember one time I was consulting for a delivery business, and I found that there's like different ways of having a no value in a record. And I found that if it was one, so you can have a null or you can have an empty string. Basically, just they both mean nothing. It's like two types of nothing, right? But which type of nothing it was the biggest predictor of whether people would reorder. And it turns out that if it was one type of nothing, it meant that the mapping thing failed. Yeah. So the machine, so if a human came in and cleaned that data, they would have just said, oh, it's all just nothing, right? Whereas the machine goes, no, nothing type 1 is very different outcome to nothing type 2.
Right.
So yeah, that sort of stuff comes in all the time. And I love to have the view of, like, with data, like, I'm a bit sensitive about this word cleaning, like cleaning for whom? Like, it's not the same as like pick the rubbish. So I guess, yeah, if you think about cleaning as in terms of like, it's going to look nice for guests, it's a little bit different. You might think of it more as like you're a detective on a crime scene. Yeah. Maybe that jumper, a detective for a crime scene doesn't have the cleaners come in beforehand to get rid of all that nasty blood. Yeah.
Good analogy. I like it. I guess
I like to live in the dirt.
What are some of the unique kind of data challenges that you've solved? Like are there any kind of unique ed cases where you're like, help fix it up?
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. So I've been coding since I was 5, so I'm pretty good at algorithms. So I can, and I'm a very old man as well. So I code. It was back in the day when you had like these little before the Commodore 64 that would connect to a TV.
Wow.
But yeah, so so you get good at algorithms, and you get used to seeing data and immediately knowing what it is. So you get good at the eyeballing. So a challenge for young developers is that they think of data as just numbers, and so you can end up with weird things like the gender column has a whole lot of numbers in it, and you end up with like the mean gender. It's like, what are you talking about, mate? That's I don't think we're up to numbers yet. I know that there's a few more values now than there were before for gender, but I think you need to. So yeah, I always encourage my developers to eyeball data, really look at it, understand what it is, do it for your own suburb. Am I answering a question? I'm more of a morning person, so I'm just sort of winging it here.
It was 7:30 Facebook Live, Joe.
Yeah, 7:30 a.m. Facebook Live. That's what we want. When you look at how important. I'm going to rephrase this one. Should you, as a property investor, go to the market that's super hot, burning hot right now, and buy an investment property, or should you go to the market that's a little bit slowing? Oh no, sorry, it's already slowed down a bit. Like, how do you think about timing of some of these data, some of the metrics to give us that capital growth?
Yeah, broadly speaking, with any market, you want to be doing the opposite to, like, if you get late in the game, you're going to lose money. So broadly speaking, you want to find, this is not just real estate, this is the stock market or anything. You want to find the untrendy things that people aren't talking about. So it's like in the Great Depression, when the shoe shine boy is giving and the taxi driver are giving you stock tips, it's time to get out.
When the Uber driver these days, yeah.
When the Uber driver is asking you what crypto to go in, yeah, that's when you get out of crypto. Yeah. I'd probably give a little bit more credit to the Uber driver these days than the shoe shine boy back then. The Uber driver, maybe he's subscribed to all the right channels on TikTok and he knows what he's talking about. They can have a long time between a long time between rides some of the time. Yeah, so they can learn, I guess.
I like it.
But yes, a good question. Definitely don't just follow the crowd. So it's a massive, this FOMO thing, this psychology of like, you've got to get on once people are talking about it. So just because, it's like you made the cover of Forbes magazine, that doesn't mean that your career is going to go well from here on in.
Well,
it might be the peak.
It might be the peak. Yeah. A good question's come up. How to use data to identify gentrification in suburbs? Yeah.
So the HIP score that we have, we'll be updating it soon. So that is like a measure of gentrification, particularly at the high end. You've got gentrification.
How long have you had the HIP score up and running?
I think we launched that one about 2015, if I remember rightly. 2014, 2015.
So have you been able to track over the past, since those, 7-8 years, how does the HIP score adjust and change over time?
That is, it certainly would. So we will be coming out with new HIP scores, and now that I'm back on the project. So I was off the project for 5 years, doing data science consulting, and I came back onto it full time. So in that time, in the past year, we've put up a huge amount of data, which is already available. Loads of things. I don't even know all the data there. I've got a team that finds amazing data, and we aggregate amazing data. And absolutely, we're going to be updating the livability scores and having new livability scores too. So you'll be able to see the HIP score over time. And so,
so you're going to plot it on a graph and sort of show over. Wow,
that's right.
Really cool.
And what are the leading indicators? So one thing is identify. So the question is identify gentrification in suburbs. So that might be when it's already happening. Is there something that happens really early on? Yeah. So the students move in, or there's a slight change in the type of profession that moves into the area. It remains to be seen. We're going to have a huge amount of data on like what kind of businesses. We already have that actually. What kind of businesses? We just got to bring it out to the people. This
question here: how do you know a suburb will go from 6 on a HIP score to 9? Because that's like the goal. Is there a way to forecast it out and identify?
That's huge. 6 to 9. So to get to a 9, there aren't many 9s out there. So HIP score is one of these ones that it's like there's a small number that are very hip, and it goes down quickly. Yeah. So, your Fitzroy and Brunswick and, Fortitude Valley, and Like Surrey Hills, there aren't that many of them. They're famous, people know them, but you might not expect that your average Western suburb is going to just suddenly pop to becoming a 9. That might be a little bit too much, but maybe you don't need that much. Maybe you can go up 0.5 and it has a name for itself within the context of the community. Maybe it's just hipper than other places. Yeah.
A question I've often thought of is because a lot of people would love to think they can time the market, but how do you know, or is there a way you can tell that you're actually probably too early? And how do you know when you're too late? Like, is there certain data points that say, yep, no, this is something you want to steer clear of? Or is it saying, I'm like, it's going to be good, but I'm like 5 years out? Is there a way to tell that?
Yeah, I guess that's very much a function also of what are the leading indicators themselves. Yeah. So where are you in the market cycle? Where are you relative to the suburbs nearby? That's been a particular interest to me, is how compared to all the other prices nearby, what kinds of places, where should the suburb be? I should mention also, we provide median. We're coming out very soon. In fact, we already have it. It's just we're going to make it more up to date. So we'll be providing median prices where CoreLogic and REA do not. So we have the ability to get around. We can use machine learning to work out where the median price would be if there was enough volume. So you can look up little suburbs, little low volume markets, and break it down by number of bedrooms. So that's already live on the site, and there's going to be an update for that real soon.
This is a great question I wanted to bring up is, Phil Anderson, he has his 18.5 year property cycle. Do you subscribe to that? Have you done any research or anything into that? The answer might be no, but it'll be worthwhile.
So my approach is first build the model, see what the data says, and then look into what it might be doing. Yeah. So I start with the data. So it's a bit different to say a lot of domain experts that will read other domain experts and sort of contemplate it and compare the data. So if an 18.5 year property cycle showed up in my data, then I'd probably want to know who the Phil Anderson is.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Maybe he's great. I don't know anything about him. So
have you read that book yet, Joe?
It's a hard read. It's a very hard read.
We should get Phil on the show. But
we should.
Yeah, I mean,
it's cool for us, man.
The longer you're looking at, the harder it is to forecast. So those sort of level, I haven't tried to forecast that far out. There's a problem of, particularly before, when I only had data from 2000 to 2016 when I was doing the old microburbs. So there are no 18.5 year cycles in that data anyway. My thing is much more like go fine grain, so because you've got more statistical significance there. So there are these more broad sort of macro economist way of looking at things. They, maybe some of them get it right, but in general, it's quite a hard thing to draw these grand patterns over history. It's easier to just say, look, this thing is mispriced. Yeah. So it's like you're in a market and someone's selling those widgets for $5 when someone else is selling them for $50, and you ask the other guy, how much are you buying the widgets for? And they say 10. You buy from them, sell it to them. That's a much more, my view, that's a much more sound business model.
That is what I feel like I do every single day, is literally identifying assets that are below market value for what I believe the true market to be, and then negotiating the best price to secure those properties. Is that what Microburbs is all about? Like, is that going to be a function of the platform to say, hey, just letting you know, we've scraped all of the domain data. We're looking at this place. It's a 3-bed, 1-bath. It's listed for 420. I know this real estate agent. Well, this is a script that I'm trying to create, is identifying all of the agents in all of the suburbs and identifying who sold what and how much they listed the property for, so you can work out their percentage of how much they underquote a property. So are you going to be able to I feel like I went too deep with that, but
what's the question, Joe?
I lost my question.
Tell me?
I've heard of models that have used the underquote ratio.
Have you used any? Have you got any that I can have access to?
That's a good
I don't
one.
know. Did anyone know where my question was going there? I lost it.
Yeah,
I think what you're saying is, Joe, how do I know which agents to buy off? Is that the question?
Oh no, yeah. How do you identify that end product that is cheaper? How do I identify these diamonds in the rough?
People say, okay,
ages.
so there's buyer's agents and seller's agents, but the other one category is the buyer's seller's agent, the seller's agent who's nice to the buyer, because they in turn want to sell the property of that when they become a vendor. Yeah.
I call them dodgy agents.
I know we've sort of danced around this somewhat, and I think the reason is because you are working on it, but I'm not expecting you to tell us everything, but is there one sort of little thing that you're highly confident at the moment where you think there is a way to identify a particular suburb? Is there just one kind of that people can, like a little breadcrumb, people can be like, and then they'll go and look at microburbs later on?
I'm running out of witty, evasive answers here.
Just one thing.
A breadcrumb. Yeah. So I mean, where a suburb is placed relative to other suburbs really matters.
Okay.
That's one thing I'm finding.
Okay.
So comparative prices on median. Oh, and to answer your question before about individual properties, so are we going to be doing them later? So that at the moment we're focused on suburbs and then microburbs, so like SA1s, and then we'll do. So we've got the data to do individual properties, but we've got a development pipeline. So we're going ever more micro over time. That's the overall plan.
But it's going even more micro.
Microburbs. Beautiful. I'm excited for what this new platform is going to be. I'm excited for the outcome that it's going to give us as property investors. How do you think about, like, let's say you create this tool that sounds absolutely spectacular and it tells all the investors where to go ahead and buy a property. Does that not then, people are then like, oh, great, we're all going to buy a property here, and there's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and then too many people go, and it all kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
You're saying go here and then.
Yeah. So there comes a point where maybe you need to charge more for fewer people so that it's still valuable. Otherwise, you just get in quickly. I think one thing is that there are many markets. There are different kinds of markets that work. It's not a single rule. So the machine has many, many things that it looks at. So not everyone will buy in every market. So you had your, someone with less money, 300 to 600 grand, they're going to buy something different to a suburb that's like middle ring, but might become gentrified of a major metro. Yeah. Does Luke agree if Sydney is king? Come on, Jeff. Ask if Luke agrees.
Oh, that wasn't me. That was Joe put that up. That wasn't me. But I'm just looking at the suburbs. I think you certainly are onto something in terms of where prices are relative. And I've just had a quick look myself, and I quote this quite often. The suburbs that I sort of live in, I suspected that the suburb that I live in compared to a suburb that was neighbouring next door, which is a little bit more expensive, not a lot more expensive, so the suburb we bought in, there wasn't any much scientific to this. This is, I'd say, outperformed by about 20 to 25% compared to that suburb that was more expensive right next door.
Wow.
So
what's that? What caused that, Jeff? What do you think?
Well, maybe, I mean, this is what Luke is working on, but back to his point, where you identify suburbs relative to each other, but then I'm sure it's not as simple as that. That's where there's other factors that would come into it. So, but I think that's one indicator. So it's then, yeah. I wish I had all the data.
Yeah. So if you think like on the stock market, you've got pair trading. So that's where like IBM and Microsoft, this is from back in the day. You shouldn't update this analogy because you shouldn't be doing pair trading anymore. But it's like IBM and Microsoft are always at 0.6, right? One goes off and then it should go back. I'm not applying pair trading in this, but that's a way of explaining it. So like prices should be somewhere, suburb prices should have a consistent relative position to one another, unless there's something actually changing in the suburb. So obviously you've got the dynamics like with the ripple effect, where people are learning. It's a bit of a slow process. You go to inspections and you can't get prices out of people because there's going to be an auction, and it takes weeks to realize that you can't afford that suburb in a boom market, so you have to move further out. And the opposite, so you just learn, oh wow, look, did you know we can get closer to town with a cheaper property? So those sort of things, the market information in real estate is kind of slow, unlike in the stock market, which makes it a good market for taking a position on.
It's also very inefficient. There's a lot of things that you don't know. There's a lot of things you don't get told. There's a lot of stuff that people, as property, like data, just doesn't get access to. The real estate agent, for one, is a massive variable. Like the vendor, another massive variable. Do you want to sell this thing right now? What are the terms of the deal? Another area that I think is interesting is selling. We've got a great question from Brian here. Assume it can also assist in guiding the right time to sell when growth is slowing down and you're in consolidation, or do you take profits and move on? So I guess what he's saying is there, how do you kind of work out when there's a good time to sell?
Not financial advice, Joe, please. Don't go and sell based on what.
I'm feeling pretty safe. I haven't named any suburbs, I guess. But I guess, no, in general. But like general principles. So absolutely. So you've got a forecast. A forecast can tell you it's either going to go up or it's going to go down. Or even without a forecast, you can just look at indicators and get a sense of it. Oh, look, at the market cycle is going out. Maybe it's time. Obviously, transaction costs in real estate are high, so you have to take into account stamp duty and other costs.
Probably about 8%, isn't it, roughly? Give or take.
It's a lot. So so if you can still make money after doing that and you want to switch markets, then by all means, go for it.
Joe, I think you and I need to build I think another factor, and if this is true, maybe, I don't know.
We can call it the AUS Prop factor. We can call it the AUS Property Investor Index.
The APIF. But I think another thing that I suspect changing my suburb is that I'd have to go back and look at it, is I think they sold off some of the public housing. So I think combination of it being cheaper plus a reduction in public housing. And it's not to say that public housing is bad, good. I'm just purely looking at price action. I think that would, and then younger families coming into an area, owner occupiers. So a change of ownership structure, whether that be government or sort of privately owned.
I have to say I'm a supporter of public housing. It's not just because it gives me lots of hits to my website. I do actually think it's good for the world, good for people.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a super interesting conversation. Not the conversation that I thought we were having. It went a different direction than I totally expected. So that's always a good thing. It's always interesting, because the platform that I've been playing around with for all these years has so much more coming to it, which is what I'm very much excited about. So how do people learn more about you, Luke? How do they learn about Microburbs more? Like what are the next steps for people if they listen to this and they thought, gosh, these emerging technologies, this artificial intelligence, I think data is fundamental to my property investing journey, and without it, I'm going to struggle. But I'm not a data scientist. I need tools. What do we do?
Go to microburbs.com.au, search for any suburb you like, or search for indicators. It all comes up in the search box. You get beautiful heat maps. They'll soon be, on an SA1 level. They're at a suburb level now. And you get a huge amount of data that hopefully we're showing the most important stuff first. We're making it easier and easier for people to understand. And I really have the mission of I hope that I can really bring suburbs to life and make the journey much easier instead of going to a million different places. So if you can do your due diligence in just one place, then that is awesome. That makes me happy when I hear that people are doing that. So yeah, most of the data is still free. So it's freemium, but it's mostly free. So you can really learn a lot about places and what they like to live in. And I'm sure you'll get lots of surprises. Look up your own suburb as well. And it's a great site for just browsing around and learning about our beautiful country.
Love it. Well said. Well said. I'm excited for this new platform.
What sort of time frame do you have for? I think you did mention this before the show, so you I wasn't surprised that they wouldn't. But are you sort of looking to release a lot of new stuff in 3 to 6 months, so then we can reconnect?
New stuff's coming out all the time, so we release a new feature. Release new features most weeks. So a whole lot of real estate data is about to come up. So unit to house ratios and land to asset ratios and quantiles. So you'll have your 25% and your 75%, even when there's not enough volume. So that's the big stuff that I probably, if I was a better salesman, I would have been focused more on that. Just saying, look, you'll just get much more accurate view of the market by going to Microburbs. It's much more nuanced, even small markets by going there. That's coming up real soon. But right now, already there are 3,000 indicators on the site. So we're already the largest geospatial database in Australia, as far as I'm aware. And
I believe that. I believe it.
Time series data as well, if you pay, if you want to see the history.
Of the HIP scores and all of that. But that's coming.
That's coming.
Oh, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it because as soon as you can start to see what I'm really excited about is like it's kind of like SimCity when you see a place growing and you see the reasons why it's growing, you can start as a property investor say, I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen here. I've seen it happen there. And you can go look at the data and say, yes, this has absolutely happened. These 10 indicators, these 8 indicators have told me that it's going to grow. So you can go out there and invest with confidence to say, yes, I know the price is at X price, but I can see that it's going to go further. So property data is 100% a part of that. So I'm super excited to see what that is. But again, boots on the ground, everyone. You know what I always say, get out there, verify, trust the data, but verify it. Unreal. Jeff, do you have anything else you wanted to mention or anything to say? Luke, same with you.
I think we've covered a lot of things, a lot of ground, and just ground that I hadn't expected to cover. So I just wanted to say thanks for being such a great platform for us to display and use and help people with their investing journey, Luke. So keep on. I'm excited to see where you land in the next 6 to 12 months, and we'll be keeping a close eye on you for sure.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you would have me give me this platform. I'd just like to say, finally, I'm an approachable guy. So I love to learn from people. I love to help people with their journey to the degree that I can. I don't know that everyone knows exactly what suburb to buy in now. It's not like there's suddenly a whole lot of calls for Walgett or something. Yeah, very happy to engage with people to help them get a great deal.
Are you still doing? Are you still wanting to chat to people as well for 15 minutes? Or
yeah, happy to.
Okay, I'll drop that link so people can book that if they want to help you out with Microburbs.
Love it. Awesome. Good luck, everyone out there. Luke, anything you wanted to cover off or mention?
I think that's really good. So yeah. Yeah. Hey, I'm a morning person.
You're a morning person. Love it. Thank you, everybody. Let's go use data. Let's go buy a property and let Microburbs help us along the way. See you later.